Good afternoon, everyone. How the hell are you?
Well, thank you. You?
Doing damn good, but I'm going to get better.
Very good.
Now, Cassie, it might be operator failure, trying to get the screen set up. It might just be the tech, or I can see who's on and not because I've got a great picture. There we go. All right. So first and foremost, as we get going, I can't stress enough, I'm extremely honored that last time we had 126. This time, I think we got 140 registered. And just to let you know, I stepped out of bold. I don't think I'm going to get a foul for this, but I'll be candid. I didn't quite prep as much as we did. So I'm going to start off with what one of my business teachers told me to never do, is start off with an apology. But one of the things that I ask is that when you think about feedback for today, and I'll try to remember to say this again next time, please let us know not only what we did well, but more importantly, what can we do to bring you more value? So for example, one of the things I'm going to try to organize for next time, I just caught myself failing at a bowl law. What I intend to do for the next meeting or the meeting after is actually get a panel of 3 strong independent agents from across Keller Williams, New England, so that you guys can network with those people, find out what they're doing at a high level, and see if we could grow. With that being said, I'm extremely grateful for the honor and the challenge of being with you guys today. I'd love to hear from 3 or 4 people about what they're grateful for. This is where I'll try to shut up, and as a high I, that's very hard for me to do. Hang on. Oh, I'm on. Hang on just a second. I think I got a all right. Sorry about that, guys. So I'd love to hear from 3 things that you guys are grateful for. Anybody want to start?
Family.
Excellent. Who else? Nancy, was that you who just spoke? Or Nancy Babcock, what are you grateful for today? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, there I am. I'm really grateful for such an extensive training and mentoring program across the board at KW. I've been at 2 other agencies. I've never had anything like this.
Love it. Thank you very much. And candidly, it's changed. KW's changed my life. So I can't stress enough. Thank you. Let's hear from one more.
If I may,
go for it.
Up every day.
Excellent. Love it. So just as a side note, and I'll share my agenda in a second. One of the things I encourage you guys do, if you're not doing, and I mentioned this a little bit last time, try to start your day with gratitude. And literally, whether it's right when you get up, tell the person, if you wake up next to someone, what you're grateful for them about. Make sure the first things they hear is some great things to program it. One of the bold laws, and if you guys haven't taken bold laws or bold, I encourage it, is programming up here leads to thoughts, leads to actions. And the Market Center, I'm honored to be part of and the team leader of now, the second time this stretch 5 years. We start with a gratitude circle at 9 o'clock. We go through what we're grateful for. And then we actually go into the goals of the day. And so I encourage you, if you have accountability, partner or something like that, or even with your spouse, just start your day with gratitude, because you'll find things that are great or things to be grateful for. And it's just a nice way to start the day. Personally, I listen to NPR. Some of you might like that, some of you might not, but I think you'll all agree there's plenty in the news right now not to be grateful for. So I'll start off with your programming. One of the other things that I love to hear about as well, and it takes guts to share these. Who had some pretty significant fail forwards in the last 4 weeks? And remember, failure is an active part of success. What does Keller Williams say? Fail fast, fail forward. Anybody have any big growing moments, painful or otherwise, that they wish to share? Now, am I the only one who drank coffee today? Because everybody seems quiet. Rosemary, you want to help us out? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I actually put an offer in for a client, and the offer was 2 minutes away from being accepted. They called me and they said that they weren't sure if they were actually ready to buy a house. So yeah, what I learned from that is that I think that I'm going to guide people a little bit stronger and take a little bit more time and see if they're really ready to make this giant decision and work a little more closely with them.
I think that's huge, and I applaud it. Most of us have been through that before. Yeah, no, that's a tough one. And you know, have they recalibrated? They've come back, or they just pulled all the way out of the process?
They won't call me back now.
So with humor, and be careful how you use this one. This is an Armstrong original. Side note, in Vermont, my nickname's Panda. If somebody's dodging you and you're not sure if they're dodging you or not, put your phone on the charger, grab a fellow agent's phone. And so when they say, hey, Rosemary, did you change your phone number? Yeah, my phone was on the charger. So I grabbed my office mate's, phone call. Now, again, with humor, be careful how you use that and use it only for the right intentions.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Who else has had a fail forward that they'd like to share that we could all grow from? All right. Anybody? You want to look for two more? It's going to get awkward if we don't share them.
I don't know if it's necessarily a fail forward, but I've been in the same property for 20 years, and I put an offer in myself on a property in an out-of-state property. And to Rosemary's point, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm so nervous. My offer was accepted, so yay. But I can't believe how nervous I am about it. It's so crazy. Maybe it's because it's out of state. So I guess my point with that is you just have to have empathy. You just have to know that there's so many emotions involved for people buying and selling, or, whatever it is. It's just, I can't believe how nervous I am about it. I've been doing real estate 20 years and I'm nervous about buying a property out of state. Crazy. So
Cheryl, I really appreciate your vulnerability, and I may have touched on this last time. Side note, you can all raise a finger if I start repeating myself, how many times I've said it as a polite plug. Brian, keep moving. But one of the things I really appreciate what you shared, Cheryl, is you were very, very vulnerable. And there's a great book, Renee Brown, I think it's, The Power of Vulnerability, I think is the name. Oddly enough, it's not the book of the month, but it's Power of Vulnerability. I got to read it. Candidly, I got two close friends, Adam Hergenrother, and my wife is obviously an extremely close friend, who really loved it. And what they actually talked about is that so many of us don't want to be seen as vulnerable, but vulnerability actually builds strength, because when we're vulnerable, we can get wounded, we can get scarred, we can get cut, we heal, and we grow. The other great thing I'd encourage anybody to share based upon what Cheryl just said is, in Rosemary, this one may be a great one for you if you bought a house. Share your own nerves. I've been in my house for 25 years, but during the transaction, I was an emotional twit. I didn't know, I moved 400 yards. I didn't know if my cat was going to get run over because it was going to go to the old house. If my stepson, who's now 32 and an appraiser, was going to get off at the wrong school bus stop. So I encourage you, tell those stories, especially if it's yours personal. A, people will appreciate it. B, it'll make you seem more vulnerable, which people are going to be drawn to. And C is you may be able to leverage one of my favorite tactics, which is the algorithm of feel, felt, found. I can appreciate how you feel. A lot of buyers like yourself have felt the same way. In fact, and then you tell your story. What most of them found is on the other side of those nerves and those, these jitters was a phenomenal place to start the next great chapter. And that algorithm is a field, felt, found. Janet,
that's what you need to do, Rosemary, is just let them know that, you understand all the emotions they're going through, and it's best to talk them out and figure it out. And then that way you can help them move forward or not move forward. But basically you're there, and communication is key.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Janet, would you be so kind?
Sure, I'm from Beverly, Massachusetts. So it's not the last 4 months, but it's the last year. And the fall forward is realizing or being reminded that we get to choose who we do business with. And I had 2 experiences, listings, totally high maintenance, we're among friends, cray people. And it was an energy zap, a time zap. One ended up getting to the closing table in a very difficult way. The other ended up to be a cancellation, but it diverted me from what I really wanted and needed to do. So I'm reminded now, my fail forward is I get to choose who I do business with, and I got to rely upon my instincts at the beginning of the process. So I can't be so hungry that I take everything coming my way. Does that make sense?
What do you guys think? Being
All
on
right.
the head shakes, I would say,
I agree totally. I totally agree. It's also one of those things when you got to know whether to fish or cut bait. I mean, I've got some people that I'm trying to figure out what category to share them in, but they have been nothing but a pain. And my biggest thing, and I don't know if it fits in here, maybe we can discuss it another day, but they think they know everything. And they tell me things that I know are wrong, and so, but because they are, he's a doctor, she's high tech, they make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. They're fairly young. At what point do I correct her so she knows the right thing? At what point do I let it drop? But I agree with the lovely lady from Beverly. You get to know who you do business with. Everything's done with them now. I don't have to do business with them again.
So a couple of quick things, and I'm growing, folks, so hopefully I have your patience. But in the future, we'll make sure we get agendas out in advance. I got one. I'm afraid if I screen share with 140 people, because I've never been, on a Zoom and hosted so much, I'll screw it up. But things that I had on the conversation and also on the agenda that I'll circle back. One is deep dive going into the buyer trap. Digitally based, physically enhanced, also E2P, getting tactical in a tough market. I was going to talk a little bit about a variable rate commission, dialers, and the art of communication. 14th law of leadership, as well as a podcast suggestion and a book suggestion. Does that sound like a reasonable amount of stuff to bring you guys value in the next 45 minutes? Okay. And I quote way too much. So as a side note, Nancy, what you just talked about and what Janet, you were talking about too, brings me to mind, she's actually down in Bold right now with a very powerful independent agent we have in Vermont, Diane Vila, who I think the world of. And she's been going through a process, figuring out her path, so forth and so on. And she's been challenged with lead gen, and wanting to also enjoy the journey. Does anybody share that pain? So thank you. One of the things that sort of resonated, and it comes from an ancient Chinese warlord by the name of Sun Tzu, never met him, hope to meet him in the afterlife, just not at the tip of his sword, is have form, but be formless. Meaning, again, have form, but be formless. So when that comes to mind, what I think of is knowing a talk track or a script or the algorithm so well that you don't follow it like a robot. You can weave in and weave out and make it sound human. The other thing that I think Diane took it to is if she has form 2 or 3 hours a day, lead generation, she can be formless in, does she go to Italy? Does she go to Jamaica, where she's got family in both locations? When she can, as you guys know, this is one of the great things about being in real estate. Nobody will ever give you a pink slip, and you set your own hours. So it allows us to be formless when we have form. So I encourage you guys, the other thing to think about too, and this isn't so much a challenge, it's an observation, and you can disagree with me, is I find if we're working with people that we don't like, and they're all, as the Dalai Lama would say, masterpieces in the making, some more evolved than others. We either A, have a lead generation problem, because we haven't had enough leads so that we can be respectfully decline those we don't wish to work with. Or we have simply said no to something, else by saying yes to these people. And that's a really hard one, because I don't know about you guys, I get charged up and helping agents who may or may not, fight as hard as they can for their success, helping buyers and sellers who do the same, make mistakes over and over again, but I'm going to circle back, jump tracks right back to where Nancy, when we get all the people who have friends who tell us our clients what to do, try asking a question. Hey, Nancy, I can absolutely appreciate you get some friends who are giving you some great advice. Tell me a little bit about their perspective. They investors, they just buy a couple houses. Oh, yeah, well, they bought a house in the last year. Is it possible that they're giving you great advice based upon their perspective, having bought 1 or 2 homes in the last 3 years? Which perspective you think may have better information for you and your goals? Somebody's bought 1 or 2 homes. You can use this with parents too. Or somebody like myself who's actually sold 25 homes in the last year. And use it as a way to help lead them, because you're not saying don't listen to them. You acknowledge them, you compliment them, and so forth. And let me just read a chat while we start going. Anthony, private to everyone. I've been struggling with shadowing a transaction start to finish. Ideally, both sides would be a big one for me to feel more comfortable about signing someone up and doing the right. We got to just move the thing. Feel more confident about signing someone up, doing the right by their family. I'm in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire seacoast. Right, let's actually maybe Anthony circle back to that one just in a second, because I'd love to find a little bit more details on that to maybe get you some better suggestions. On the agenda, I have the buyer trap. Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the buyer trap? Okay, I've had the honor in working with a couple hundred agents, KW Vermont, and I'm honored to get to know you guys. It is a privilege. And for the record, I drive motorcycles at 3 digits, jump out of planes occasionally, have heliboarding, and it intimidates the high hell out of me to speak to 120 of you on Zoom. So more intimidating than the motorcycle at 3 digits. I hope that's an honor to you guys. So when I'm working with the real estate team I'm a part of, but also all the great independent agents we have at KW Vermont and all the agents around, one of the things I'm concerned about is I'm hearing tons of people who have a lot of buyers. And if you're out showing 15, 20 homes, do you feel like you're really busy and you should be getting results, but maybe aren't? Now, what do you guys like most about working with buyers?
They're liars.
All right, we're careful of the programming. I understand the challenges, but careful of the programming. What do you guys like most about? Let's hear 2 or 3 things. What do you like most about working with buyers?
They're fun.
Let's say again.
I'm saying the excitement.
Yeah, drive around that corner, their house. Rosemary, you probably had it. They see it and they're like, "Oh wow, this is it."
Brian,
What else do you guys, what do you not like about working with buyers? Michael, your eyes tell me that you've got a thought in there. Michael Mahoney, what are you thinking right now? And you can kill the camera, and that just would hurt my feelings like I offended you.
It's all right. No, it depends on, it depends on the buyer, but, basically saying though, when you need a few things done, and you would think that this big deal would be enough for them to say, well, yeah, I'm going to do it. And they continuously sometimes just won't do what they need to do, either to be qualified or to, whatever it is I need along the way. And then the other side of it is understanding how quickly they need to respond if we're going to make an actual offer that's going to go through.
Yeah, that one's a huge one. And you and Rosemary just talked about, and this is not to imply you haven't done it, because we're only getting brief snippets of what actually happened. But you and Rosemary talked about connecting on a theme right there. What are our conversations like as we begin the process? Have we identified list to sell price ratios? How many offers they're up against? Inventory, how fast they have to move. And I encourage you to find talk tracks to help people with that. The other thing that comes to mind too is we'll talk about some qualifiers in a second. And anybody who doesn't have their camera on or has a camera, I only have so much video right in front of me. So please do raise your hand because I think it does help me, better make sure this is interactive. And again, thanks for everybody for being on here. Mindy Doppler Nelson, you had something to contribute.
Yeah, I did. When you
Thank you.
asked, thank you, what you don't like about working with buyers, I have this couple who will send me a text at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night and say, can you show me this property first thing tomorrow morning? And it's like, I sent them that listing 2 or 3 days ago and said, let's go see it. And they think that they're the only clients and that I am available 24/7 and at their beck and call.
Absolutely.
And yet we had the buyer consultation when I told them I do showings in the afternoon and that some properties require 24-hour notice. So we had the conversation and I thought they were coachable.
So, and I say this not pejoratively, we got to love them like our children. And again, I don't say that like in a diminutive fashion. I say that like with love. We tell our kids to do the recycling. They don't do it 1 week. We're not just going to boot them to the curb, although might have been tempted. So yeah, and there's a theme there too. And if you're doing the consults, then we may just find ways to try to repeat things without being a jackhammer because nobody likes that. And that might be a question. Hey, Mindy, could you help me out here? I thought this was a great fit for you when I sent it to you on Monday and today's Wednesday. How can I better communicate with you to make sure that we don't miss these opportunities? Now, that's not natural because you probably want to say blank, blank, what were you blank thinking? I told you this was going to happen. So my challenge to everybody today too is try over the next 3 to 4 weeks before we see each other, whatever you want to say, find a way to ask it. Whatever you want to say, find a way to ask it. Now with humor, you're going to fail at the first 10, 15, 12 times. I have a 10-year-old stepdaughter and I practice objection handling with her. I'll listen to a Chris Voss book or the FBI book that I'm going to mention today, and I try those tactics with her. It's pathetic. And I celebrate when I have successes with her, but it's, let's be frank, pathetic. So one idea for the buyer trap, and this is not going to part waters. I don't have anything that's going to give you the magic bullet. You might send up some qualifiers. So like Mindy, if you were the buyer, I say, hey, Mindy, just to let you know, the average American home buyer, not so fast, sees approximately 12 to 14 homes before they find the home that's right for them. Now, generally, if I'm doing my job and I understand your goals correctly, as you repeat the goals, I can generally find a home that's right for you in about 6 or so showings. Now, if we're not finding something in that amount of time, and this might elevate the numbers for this market, then either one of two things are happening. One, I'm not connected to your goals and I'm not listening. Secondly, your needs may not be calibrated to the marketplace. Your needs may not be calibrated to the marketplace, or your needs and wants, which is a fancy way of saying, what's that very crass, you've got champagne taste and a what?
Caviar, I say caviar taste with the ground beef budget.
That's good. I haven't heard that one. I probably will use that. I smoke a lot of meat. So Kate from Cape Cod says, yeah, connecting with them off market. I have been marked. You must have honest conversations where things go 50 to 100. The other suggestion that I have, and you guys have probably already thought of this because I'm not giving you necessarily any magic you haven't heard. I apologize if that's what you're expecting. One is the conversation about how to write an offer to protect themselves from their concerns versus the conversation or the way to write a contract to win a bid in this market. Does that make sense? Sort of like two different thoughts. So agent was just talking to me about, I couldn't recommend they pull the inspection. My suggestion to any of you right now is don't ever, ever, ever recommend they pull an inspection, because that's going to be the house that was, built on 3 Mile Island and nobody knew about it. Sorry if anybody's from 3 Mile Island, I didn't mean to slam. But my thoughts being is this, if I was talking to Richard Merrill, Richard, hey, can absolutely appreciate how important it is for you to know exactly what you're buying this house. That's where, common practices at this point will be possibly attorney reviews, inspections. We could get some, I'm going to exaggerate, environmental testing. We can do all things. My only concern is what's more important to you? Protecting your, risk in the financial, the risks of the property, or finding a home. And if you're looking to find a home in this market, while I can never recommend this, this is what I'm seeing people to do to win offers. Now, FYI, and please tell your principal broker I said this. If somebody ever goes against your advice, send them a quick email afterwards. Janet, I can really appreciate that you want to offer $25 million for the single wide mobile home that's been torn in half. As you are the captain of the ship and I am the humble navigator, I will gladly draft this up. I just want to go on record telling you I think you're overpaying for this property. That way, when it comes back to haunt you and Janet says, Brian, you never told me that, I'd be like, well, here's a nice little email. So the other thing with the buyer trap, and I'll speak personally from, I'm 98% out of production, but when I was last in the field, I loved working with buyers because, I'm in Vermont. We got a beautiful countryside. I love getting out, love meeting people, seeing that smile. And I also felt I was busy. Pat, the reason why I mentioned the buyer trap, I'm seeing tons of agents who are busy right now with buyers and they feel like they got a lot going on, but what we've got in this market and most of our markets is zero inventory. Now, personally, I didn't like working with sellers because most of the time, this was a normal market, I was telling sellers a fancy way of telling their house was overpriced. The market is disagreeing with your pricing strategy. The market is disagreeing with your pricing strategy. Side note with humor, the definition of a diplomat, the person who can say the nastiest of things in the nicest of ways. In fact, quick funny story, and then let's keep going. My first wife, rest her soul, I prospected a guy. He told me that a KW agent wasted his time. 600,000+, which in Vermont at the time was a pretty big sales price. At the end of the conversation, I mentioned my wife's name because I was on her team. And he's like, that was the agent. So he was expired. He started at 825, expired at 725. I went out to his house, told him 650. He got almost belligerently angry. I asked him, do you think I knew coming out here you weren't going to like this price? He said, yes. Then I said, do I at least have your respect for showing up and telling you what I think? Then I proceeded to call him by the wrong name, get him email information, like twice I got him email information late. And I finally said to the guy, Mike, let's be frank. You're not going to hire me. I've called you by the wrong name. I got you information late. And oddly, to my surprise, he said, no, I called your wife incompetent. I think we're even on that. We're good. I'm going to hire you. Now, if humor is your strength, if it's not, let me rephrase it. If it's not your strength, and I apologize, I'm a little off topic, but you guys give me shit if I'm not bringing you value. And a woman by the name of Wheezy Greenbud, Louise Johnson, just came on from Vermont. During the pricing conversations, he wasn't lowering the price, wasn't the place. I finally even said to him, Mike, I hope you know, and this is when I was doing every 2 weeks servicing calls. I don't like these conversations. I don't like these phone calls. And there was silence. And he finally laughed and said, all right, Brian, why don't you like these calls? And this is why I didn't love sellers. Because Mike, I call you every 2 weeks, how much I love your house, but the market's disagreeing with the pricing strategy and you don't do anything. I got a $20,000 price reduction out of that. Now it was ballsy because, excuse my language, that was inappropriate. Cassie, please let me back on next month. I'll try to grow in my professionalism. But so the buyer trap right now is we got a ton of buyers. There's, we can work with tons of them over and over again, but we can have trouble getting connection. So my personal challenge to each and every one of you, is if you're not excelling at listings right now, go on a mission to become good at listings. Get uncomfortable with being comfortable. All right, wait, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And here's why. Some of you may have heard this last time. I think we're in a very, very serious, part of our industry. We've got an amazing job that lets us come and go as we please. We can help people have great, start great new chapters. We can work with generations of families. We have a phenomenal opportunity to have impacts on our community. At the same time, there's 1.3 million agent or realtors in 2006 when we had our mass lapses connection. There's now 1.6 million realtors in the industry, and we are starting a correction. Some of the Vermont crews heard some of this. My apologies. So big recommendation right now is really try to refine your listings. And that's everything from the traditional circle prospecting, whether it's your listing or somebody else's. Talk to your TL, your principal broker about any local questions about that. If Mindy, you're right to my left, if I was calling around one of your listings, I'd just say, hi, this is Brian Armstrong calling around a home that's just sold in your neighborhood. It's going to create a lot of interest. It's curious if you knew anybody's thinking about selling. Now, this is also going after grand lists, pre-foreclosures, evictions, bankruptcies, as well as some of those things. But it was interesting because the podcast I'm going to recommend of the month is Think Like a CEO. Anybody know who does that?
Gary
Yeah, that's
Keller.
a Gary Keller.
Gary Keller. And there was something, I think it was February of 19, where he had a gentleman who interviewed for his top 200 agents or the top 200 agents at KW. And it was really interesting. They talked about how many industries had to very quickly become digitally based. Your local, favorite eatery who never had an app or never had online ordering. How has it affected you guys in the last 2-3 years? What are you doing more of that you haven't or didn't used to do in the past? Nancy? Digital showings from Kate. Thank you very much, Kate. Digital showings, one of them. Excellent. Anybody else? Are most of you like me who wrote off Matterports and virtual tours and augmented reality as just a fancy way to get a seller, but buyers really don't love them because they don't load that fast? I would seriously, seriously think about those tools again right now. One of the reasons that I heard was one of the most concerning things that sellers, or what are 2 or 3 reasons you hear from sellers who are hesitant to go to market in this market?
No place to go.
No place to go. What else? Now I might just have to send everybody coffee in advance of the next, or I got to drink less.
I mean, I know for a lot of my people, they might want to get top dollar, but they don't want to pay top dollar on the other side. So
Absolutely.
I think that's even bigger than them having no place to go, because people can always kind of figure it out for the right amount of money. But if they don't want to pay that same top dollar, or now the shoe is on the other foot, and I'm seeing a lot of my sellers that don't want to participate in the same things that motivate them and the offers that they chose, they don't want to do that on the other side as a buyer. So until that changes, I think we're going to have a lot of people that are sitting on their asset because they don't want to take part in the other side.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent points.
Could
Janet.
I pipe in? Yeah, thank you. I spoke to somebody yesterday, and it's a demographic spin, I think. The older the seller potentially is, the less comfortable they are about having people come into their homes as well.
Yeah.
So she told me that she's pretty much not been out of her home for the last 2 years. So video marketing is certainly going to be important when I help her sell her home.
Spot on. Now, and Mindy, also appreciate your comments. More offers per buyer written, pro buyer accepted. Jeff St. Germain agree with 4 plans. So The other thing, and actually, Janet, you actually stumbled on the one that I was hunting from the group. And, in Vermont, it was interesting because we were probably the most moved to state, which was good and bad. We had great numbers, and then they went to hell because, with humor, everybody moved here. What a great problem. And now our numbers going in the better direction. I had made the fail forward of somewhat dismissing the importance of video and staging because things were selling so quick. Why bring in a stager if my house is going to go in 4 hours?
Mhm. I'm now actually using that as staging as a jumping off point to try to offer value. I made a call to an expired or a canceled listing yesterday and just offered as a complimentary service that I help folks with staging ideas, no obligation, So that's going to be now when I create some funnel marketing, trying for lead gen. I think I might hang my hat on that.
I love that right there. And that you're pivoting with the market. So one of the things too is they talk about in this, it was, again, I'm guessing it was February, March, April of 19, it could have been 20, is the law of going from entrepreneurial to purposeful, but also the guy talked about getting tactical. Do you guys know what the difference between strategy is and tactical is? So a strategy might be, I'm going to build a big database. I'm going to touch 33 times. I'm going to lead gen 3 to 5 hours. I'm going to, get to a point where I can do 25 sides a year, still have a life worth living. And, so that's the strategy, sort of paints the big picture. Tactical, inversely, is just what sort of Janet talked about, getting tactical, boots on the ground. I'm going to stage your home, or I'll get you a consult with a stager, videography. The other thing that comes to mind is the words that you use right now. So getting tactical is sort of where the rubber meets the pavement, if you will, in what we do. And the big thing that this gentleman, I wish I could remember his name, was talked about, this is a market to get tactical in. Don't get me wrong, strategy is important, but tactics, are extremely, extremely important. And again, that's tactics, how to procure buyers, get them there. We already talked about a few of those algorithms with sellers. So my challenge to each and every one of you today, and this is really from listening to Think Like a CEO, is what could you do to get more digitally based and physically enhanced? So when I'm thinking about the excellent contribution, please.
Oh, good.
Oh, sorry, Nancy, I thought you were jumping in. So when I'm thinking, and I encourage you guys to tell me what you're thinking, because this is about you, digitally based and physically enhanced, it's to create the environment where our sellers get more exposure through video, through virtual tours, through better, video with staging. Please don't raise your hand if you're still using, and I say this with love, if you're using your iPhone for the photography of your listings. I love you, but it's time to get tactical, and that's not tactical. Now, that may be so that we help buyers really get to know the house as we represent sellers before they even come in. I don't know if you guys have 72 sold in your area. We've got an agent it's a national marketing program. I think there's a lot of value to it, but they put so much emphasis in video and staging in advance. The idea is, thank you, Rosie, very much. This is Rosie. She's a saint. She keeps me, smacks me up the head on a regular basis and keeps me somewhat scheduled. Thank you, Rosie. Oh shoot, now I lost my train of thought. The videos to help the sellers. No, thank you, Cassie. Help the sellers know that we're going to add, you could even go so far as we're going to ask all buyers to confirm they have watched the videos, seen the photography of the house before they come, because I have an at-risk seller. The other thing is, side note on staging, a couple ideas for you. One is certainly you can go out and do it yourself, learn it. It's a great idea. The other thing is, don't hesitate to find a stager in your area and possibly say to your sellers, I'll pay for the first hour and a half as a consult. Anything beyond that, you're responsible for. You don't have to take the recommendations. quick side note, what's the other great thing that happens there if you have somebody else talk to them about how they keep their house?
It's not all coming from you. You've got reinforcements telling them to either, do A, B, C, or D, or clean that mess, or whatever it is you want to tell them.
Yeah. I had one guy get livid at a stager, and she was nailing everything I wanted to talk about. So I got the listing, we kept it, we sold it. But I got to tell you, if I had to tell that guy, as diplomatic as I can be, I don't think we would have got it. So, high-end digital staging, digital magazines, living YouTube channels, drones, absolutely stuff like that. And we're getting a little bit late into this. So I want to try to pick up the pace, and I'm talking to me because I talk too much. What do you think you could do to get more digitally based, physically enhanced with buyers? What about a potential document that talks about various tools to use, such as if we have the floor plan staging? But has anybody ever recommended Google Earth to their buyers on a regular basis? So years ago, I had my first ever virtual buyers, and this is going back like 6-7 years. And there was this beautiful Vermont Cape in a great town I love called Huntington, metal roof, all this stuff. And I hadn't recommended Google Earth. The buyers from Texas asked me, what about that property across the street? And I'm like, what do you mean? There was a hoarder's house across the street, and the yard was full of appliances, broken down cars. Like, I almost wondered why the seller put so much money into their house. So question again, I want to leave you with, and feel free, see, high-end digital mag, I have a rig in a car. Don't hesitate to invest in stuff, but also don't hesitate to find some relationships with photographers or Matterport people. Maybe you get paid at closing, whatever the case, or they get paid. Encourage you guys, think what you can do to be digitally based, physically enhanced. And the challenge I see for all of us, besides we need inventory, is if we just stop staging properties, and why use a professional photographer? I can just use my iPhone. What does that do to our value?
You might as well, at that point, you might as well be a for sale by owner.
Absolutely. So any questions before I move us on to a tactic, talk a little bit about variable rate commissions and dialers?
Brian, one thing that I would say about the topic of digital marketing though, is you can't do the marketing of like 2017. So if you're going to get into the digital marketing space, it needs to be 2022 and beyond. So you need to start thinking bigger, because I can guarantee you, I've been at listing appointments going up against other agents that claim that they have a digital presence. And when I show how I digitally market, and they already know how that person digitally markets, it's night and day. So I spend a lot of time researching how people on the West Coast market, because let's be honest, they do things before we do.
Yep.
And people in New York City, they do things way more than we do, and faster. So getting comfortable with doing things that might not be in your normal everyday market now, they'll be in your market in a year. So why not be the person who pioneers it?
Yeah. And, guys, be at peace when you pioneer. And Sonia, thank you very much for sharing that. You're spot on. Like, I know I'm not good enough or that great with marketing. So I'm going to talk with somebody and try to get their perspective who's into that all day long. The other thing is just be at peace, guys. When you're trying stuff new, blank is going to happen. Mistakes are going to be made. It's all part of it. Don't go into a first time with a drone or a stager and think it's going to be perfect. Make sure. And Sonia, you actually have a question. When I think Michelle Hagerstorm to everyone asked Sonia, what comes to mind when you say what you just said?
Well, the biggest thing is the video marketing piece. So people can say that they video market, but if you are just doing a glorified slideshow of a property, that's not video marketing. That's the photos on a loop that anyone can kind of do and set up on their iPhone. So a video marketing experience for a property is literally taking a buyer on a real-time view of the house. It's not overly edited. It's not overly produced, because those are the videos that kind of stick out like a sore thumb, because what are you trying to really hide? They don't need to be, they don't need to have all these filters on them. You want it to be as real time as possible, because if the goal is to get someone in the property based on the video that you're showing, either to entice them past the photos, it's either getting them in based on that. I've had offers written based on the videos that I've produced. I've closed properties based on the videos that I've put out there without someone ever stepping foot in it. So it's just, you have to sometimes put yourself in that position, spend a little extra money, and realize that if it's to your seller's benefit, if it's something that that market currently isn't seeing, it's even more important to do it, because it makes their listing stand out. Yes, we're in a market where every listing stands out because there's not very many. But if there are 4 properties in the same price point for $5,000 within each other, and they're all relatively similar, but you're taking the extra step to put it out there in a way that buyers love, where it feels like they're watching HGTV, because let's be honest, that's the experience that most buyers want. You'll be in a situation where you'll be, okay, well, we're watching HGTV. That's
Right.
Sonia's listing. That's great. So I do think that that is an important tool that a lot of agents, at least in my market, they weren't doing when I started doing it. And now it's become more of a norm. So just
Love it.
taking that risk and putting a little extra money into your business does go a long way.
And I absolutely love this. Really appreciate you sharing that. You know, a couple of things come to mind. One is, I think you're going to see some companies. I know of one that's starting in Vermont. It's going to try to offer very affordable video editing of properties. So I'm sure it's happening in your area. I've seen people actually go out, and I can't remember the person's name, hire a high school agent that was mass, just hardcore into drones, videos, and all this stuff. And they were getting paid pennies on the dollar because they're just emerging talent. So don't think it's got to be massively expensive. Side note, in this one, I wouldn't want to get too far into this, but you could also do 2 things. One is talk about levels of service. So at the gold package, my commission is blank. It has an upfront fee of Y. For this, I do X. And then for, the silver level is X. You can talk with that, work that out with your principal broker, your team lead, or your PC. Now, the other thought, along those lines too, is don't hesitate right now. This is somewhat off topic. Change the playing field with your seller. So I might say, hey, Sonia, what's most important to you? Selling your house fast or selling it for the most money? And if she was to say the most money, then I might say, hey, rather than rushing to market, and I can take pictures of my iPhones now, when you hire me, we're going to ask for a blank amount of lead time to get my stager in, to get my videographer, to do that. Now, I just know one of our agents was up against, I think, 4 or 5 other agents. In fact, the seller was nice enough to leave the cards on the table when they came in to do the listing presentation. And this agent got, in Vermont, this is a large number, $950,000 listing, because they switched from selling it fast to taking the time to get it to market in the right video, the right tech. Side note, I would encourage you, just what Sonia said, know your clients. And on the video side for buyers, do just what she talked about. Even if they have videos, I would consider taking videos myself. I was working with a second home buyer in Stowe, and they caught in the mirror that I was in full snowboarding gear. You could even hear the Gore-Tex pants because it was right down the slopes from the mountain. Now, for a ski and snow family, they actually thought that was hilarious and loved it, because that's why they were moving to Stowe. Whereas I was embarrassed, but I was honest. Yeah, I was going to take some runs. Thought I'd take some video for you. All right. So the next topic, and we've got about 10 minutes left. And Cassie, if you poke Rosie and I'll send this out in writing. But this one is very, very, I want you guys to talk with your principal brokers, your team leads before you do this. This is called the variable rate commission program. This is not original to Brian Armstrong. And for the record, I didn't like this at first. Now, the variable rate commission program, and I'm going to try to use fruit instead of numbers. Janet, if the property were sell through another licensee inside or outside our firm, we're going to charge you 6 apples. If I were to procure the buyer myself, I would, and there's no other licensee or agent involved. That's very careful. You got to put that in writing too. Then I would charge 4 apples or 5 apples. You guys decide which one, what's right for your market. Talk to your TL, PC, or whatever protocols you have. And Janet, if you were to procure the buyer and there was absolutely no other licensee involved, again, you got to jackhammer that point. Then I would charge, blank number apples. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 2. Now, the first time I used this, I did not like it. But here's what I realized. A, most of the sellers I was working with are so busy, they were not going to find their own buyer. B is it helps me get in, or helped me get into for sale by owners or expired listings when they're really tough against the commission. The other thing I would challenge you is this. If it helps you get 10 listings and 1 or 2 of those go for the lower end of that spectrum, would you be at peace with that? I got a couple head shakes. Absolutely. So if Cassie pokes me, I'll suggest the writing I would recommend if you were here in Vermont. I'm not saying lead with this, but I am saying be prepared to consider it. And again, talk to your market center leadership so all of a sudden you never see Brian Armstrong on these things again. But I'm sure that if you use it possibly as a program or even in your back pocket, you can get more appointments. Now, the thoughts I'd have for you is on the phone. If Janet was, saying, "Hey, Brian, I don't want to hire you. I don't want to pay a commission. I can handle this myself." Well, Janet, we've got a great program for sale by owners. Play the feel, felt, found. A lot of them have felt the way that you have. And what they found after researching this program was it actually is the best of both worlds. They effectively get my services for free in this market because I can usually get very high bidding. Plus, if you sell it yourself, there's an opportunity for a reduced commission. Now, if she tried to tell me like, how much is it? How much is it? I would use that to get the appointment. Janet, there's a couple bells and whistles. I wouldn't want you to miss anything. That's exactly why we should get together, discuss it in person, and make sure you know the ins and outs of the program. How would Saturday at 3 work? And if she fought me harder, I'd say, all right, well, Janet, it can go as low as X. But again, that's exactly why we need to get together, because I wouldn't want you to misunderstand anything. So Cassie's going to poke me. I'll write up how I'd recommend it to a KW Vermont agent. Talk with your TL, your PC, when to do it. Be cautious. Kate, thank you very much. In Vermont, we can represent one side as a client and the other side as a customer. That may be different in your state. Some states, if you get, it would be considered dual agency. So just think a little bit about that. It's 1:54. Any questions come to mind? We got 6 minutes left, and I hope like heck we're bringing you value. And if you got a question, you just speak up. Oh, Janet, you're muted. There we go.
All right, thanks. So I know you're going to send the email, or Cassie will send the email, which is great. But what you just described, are you essentially saying a for sale by owner listing?
So it could be used to procure for sale by owner listings.
Yeah.
It could be used to procure when you're up against 3 or 4 other agents. It could be used with expireds. And it's your decision, per your principal broker, if they're okay with it, whether you sort of like offer this as a variable rate program and you advertise it, or if you just use it in your back pocket.
I see. So it could be a traditional listing.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So again, and if it sells through MLS, it's the full boat. If I procure the buyer and I was so busy on the front lines, I knew there was a chance I would, but it was not a massive chance. So it was a real offer. It just wasn't a high propensity of happening.
Okay.
And the reason why in that last, I keep dropping in, if there's no other licensee or firm involved, is because Janet, if I listed your house and then you were having beverages, bumped into Rosemary, and Rosemary was represented by Mindy, there still would be an obligation to pay Mindy through the MLS.
Yes.
So we got to spell that out. So there's no switch and bait. There's nothing, but I will tell you, I think it'll help you get listings. And I think right now is a time to get tactical and get better at our tactics, our methods, our conversations, and absolutely our lead generation.
Thanks.
Any thoughts, questions, challenges on anything we discussed today?
Can I give a tip for Cape Cod? Because Cape Cod's so busy that nothing lasts at all. So, and you know, in Vermont, you must have vacation towns, right? Certain portions. And I don't know if you can read this like we can in Massachusetts, but if you go on the assessor's database and you punch in a road that you think is vacation homes, it'll tell you who's owning it as a primary and who's owning it as a secondary. And if they're owning it as a secondary, their mailing address is going to be different than the house address. You can call or write them and say, hey, you know, if I sold your house now, I could sell it for a fortune. I've gotten clients that way.
That's huge. And that's an example of getting tactical right now. You're going deeper to get off market. And that's huge. So Kate, thank you very much for thinking. 2 comments in this. We got a couple minutes. Let's actually talk about some other examples of getting tactical. So I got to tell you, I'm taking bold. I'm having trouble making my 100 contacts. So I used a rid afoul of think like a CEO. I encourage you guys. It's fantastic. Listen to it. You know, I'm going through financial health right now. Some great stuff. The tactical book of the month that I recommend is The Like Switch by Jack Schaefer. The Like Switch by Jack Schaefer. Now, it's a technical listen. I listen to books on Audible as opposed to read them because I'd fall asleep. It's a former FBI agent, and he goes through everything from people's eyebrows, their lips, things to use, empathetic statements, you know, and I'm struggling as I practice the empathetic statements. We've all probably said to our spouses, hey, I can appreciate your feeling. Well, you appreciate that, or you understand how I'm feeling? Whereas empathetic, hey, it seems like you're feeling that there's a tremendous amount of work that's being done. I'm not doing my part. And that's you got that right, Brian. You need to do more. So like switch. Yeah. The like switch. So really, again, a tactical listen, but he talks about years as an FBI agent, breaking down suspects, getting him to confess, all this stuff. Really interesting stuff. With that being said, other thoughts that come to mind, and feel free to jump in or interrupt. I really share what Kate shared. I mentioned this last time. For rent ads, go after them. Rear your realtor name tag. Love it. Absolutely. If you drive like me, don't put any magnets on your car. Foreclosures, get delinquent tax lists. Get, possibly talk to code enforcement agents in your town. Hey, Janet, your code enforcement, sorry, you're right next to me on Zoom. That's why I'm calling on you. I know you happen to do code enforcement inspections. Anybody on your unfavorite list, that might be having it. I hate to also say it, possibly network with divorce attorneys. And not as the harbinger of darkness, but you could present a lot of value to a divorce attorney by meeting with clients separately, being willing to testify in court about values. I've done it. And you can create multiples there. When I think of evictions, I think small landlords who have just had enough and want to get out. Worst case scenario, you find a larger landlord like me who can handle it, but may want to buy more. And Mr. Greg Powers, I got to call you on the spot because you helped sell my mother-in-law's house. Anything comes to mind that we can do to bring you guys more value?
Well, you caught me off guard. I do have one tactical thing. You asked earlier,
Please.
What you like about working with buyers. And the thing I like is I get to drive around and look for those properties where the driveway isn't plowed, the trash isn't out on garbage day, the roof needs repair. And I've gotten a number of listings and sales just by keeping my eyes open while I'm doing some other task.
Yeah, great point. I'll throw out garage sales, Craigslist, local driving around, estate sales. Hey, I know that the 25-year-old Weber's for sale. What about the house? And I think the second homeowners, what I expect to happen in Vermont, dumpsters in the driveway, Cassie, that's another great one. What I forecast in Vermont is we're going to have so many people moved here. Most of them are going to stay, but then some of them are going to be like my wife, and who I love dearly. She's going to hate the cold, dark winters. Get me out of here. And I just want more cold and more snow. So I think Kate's suggestion, thank you, Kate, start working second homeowners. and, because I think there's a chance that they're going to get not use their house. And I think we are heading into a shift, which means there's going to be massive opportunity for those who get tactical. And I think, unfortunately, for those who don't choose to get tactical, we're going to have a fair amount of pain as an industry. But where there's pain, there's opportunity. I don't mean that callously. It's just the law of life. Anything else comes to mind that we could bring to you guys in future session to bring you value? I'm trying to get a panel of 3 from a couple different market centers for the next one or so, but anything else that comes to mind? And Greg, do you have a suggestion? Oh, you muted.
Yeah, something Sonia was talking about, using drones, the different video strategies. We're individual agents. I'm not going to sit down and read the owner's manual for a drone and learn how to do that myself. So some way to form partnerships with the people who can provide those types of services, more than just saying, hey, I need some photos and writing them a check.
Yeah.
Is there some good way to build relationships with those service providers? Because they make us look more like a team. You can say, oh, let me get my drone pilot out here tomorrow or something. So just some ideas around that.
Yeah. And I'm going to go a couple minutes. So side note, it's 2. If you guys are going to jump, but I'll go 2-3 more minutes, tackle a little bit about what Greg said. And then to maybe build upon what he said, would you guys like the next session possibly have some panelists, but also really just talk head on? How do you compete against teams? Okay.
Brian, before you go, just for anybody that does have to jump, our next one will be March 8th, same time, 1 to 2, and I'll get an email out to you guys this afternoon. Just be patient as Brian gets us the wording and we gather any resources from today's call.
Excellent. And we'll, and side note, I want to be clear too, because I don't want to be called a hypocrite. I run a team. I believe the value in them. I believe the value in being independent agents. There's just whichever way you play it. But I'd say, Greg, to tackle that head on, and I want to make sure I'm bringing you a ton of values. I got to thank the independent agents at KW Vermont, because they really are the ones that got this going by challenging me to bring them more value. Thank you, Wheezy, Linda, and anybody else is on for Vermont. So a couple ideas. One, I know one independent agent who actually invested in camera equipment for a local videographer. And so they helped purchase the material. It's a little bit of an expensive route. But 2 is, I wouldn't hesitate to go out to some of those videographers and ask them how much they get paid. And if you're financially able, do one of 2 things: payment advance, they get some cash now, or even, this one's from Gary Keller. Greg, you get 250 in your average shot. I'll tell you what, I will offer you $300 or $350. All that I'm going to ask is that when you get a call from me or one of my clients, you provide me priority service. So don't hesitate to think of angles like that. With stagers, and you might also, so back to the videographer, you could also, check with them or a drone pilot. I average X number of listings. My goal is to increase that by Y. If I commit to use you on any sales price over X, and frankly, right now, I'd probably use it on anything, because it's as much a marketing tool, pulling on what Sonia said, so that people look at your listings, they see it. If I committed to, use you on every listing, what could you assure me for a financial cost? And what could you assure me for turnaround service? I would take that same approach with a stager. Hey, I'd like to do this program. I offer the first hour and a half in advance, stuff like that, and sort of go out and build your affiliations. The other thing that you might challenge your market center to do, is when it comes to potentially videographers or even graphic artists, ask your market center, your TL, to possibly go out and create some relationships with them, so that you use the bulk of either your entire KW or the independent agents in your KW to get some discount and preferred services. And I wouldn't hesitate as well, and Cassie can cut me off, is if you get a bunch of independent agents together in your market center, possibly even channel your services towards a couple videographers, a couple stagers, so they see that you're representing a collective. Now, my only pause on that would be with inspectors, because if they said, hey, Brian only recommends these 2 inspectors, or KW recommends only these 2 inspectors, you get a potential lawsuit issue there. Other ideas that come to mind in advance, and this is a little risky. Go out to your local high schools or colleges and ask them for interns around this topic. Now, Sonia's shaking her head, so I'm going to guess she's played with that idea before.
Yeah, my
Sweet.
videographer started with me in his final semester of college. So I was one of 2 people that he was working with. His mother is also a realtor. So he knows the expectation, and she's a luxury realtor. So he definitely understands the expectation, and I'm locked in no matter what happens. He could become the next big thing in real estate, videography, and drones, but my pricing will always be my pricing because I gave him an opportunity, and that's what he wanted. Opportunity creates relationships. So we're in a very unique part of the country where we have a lot of amazing universities. Don't be scared to reach out to certain marketing departments. If you're in the Boston area, Emerson, huge for any of this. These kids just kind of want an opportunity so that they know how they're going to pay their student loans when they leave. So you might as well give them the opportunity, and maybe they branch off into a different section of business that they never thought was possible for them. So I find that to be a key part of the pivot that I made, especially during COVID.
That's huge. That's huge. We're 7 minutes past. I'm going to get booted by Cassie pretty soon. Anything else comes to mind, please email Cassie. Let us know what we can do to bring you more value. My big request for each and every one of you, think about how you can get better tactical or more tactical. Think about, if you're working with a lot of buyers, what could you do to get more sellers? And remember, we are heading into a bit of a storm where we don't have enough inventory. You're going to make a decision. Are you going to be one of the agents that thrives, or are you going to be the one of the agent that gets out? Because there's already a bunch of agents getting out. I hope you, for your family and yourselves, and certainly for KW, will decide to get tactical, stay relevant, and get out there and slay some dragons, because you got a life worth living. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Have a damn good day, and go slay dragons.